We're coming to the end of Crocktober, and I really wanted to do one more video that is an homage to one of my favorite kitchen gadgets, the slow cooker. But instead of doing just another video with more easy family recipes, I thought it would be fun to think outside the box just a little bit and talk about some things that you may not know your slow cooker can do. Did you know that you can take sweetened condensed milk and turn it into dulce de leche or caramel using your slow cooker without even having to open these cans? I was today years old when I discovered that. I guess actually I was last week years old when I was researching for this video, but still I had never heard of that. I am excited to try that out. I'm actually going to do this overnight because it takes 8 hours in the slow cooker, but we're gonna try it out because I wanna see. So the making caramel from sweetened condensed milk totally worked. I think I've heard of doing that on the stove, but I never thought about just doing it right in the can in the slow cooker. I had to make sure that the can stayed completely submerged in water during the cooking cycle, and then you have to let them completely cool down in the water. Like I took the lid off and just let it totally cool down completely before I opened the cans. The cans were basically cool to the touch, and when I opened them up, it was just this like really rich, gooey caramel. So now I've got to figure out what I'm gonna make with that caramel, but I don't know, I just think that's a really cool trick. McKenna just said caramel apples. She's right, and 'tis the season. It's the right time of year for caramel apples or maybe caramel fruit dip. So I will leave something in the description box about that. Definitely do your research. You wanna make sure that you're doing this safely, but I don't know, I just think that's a really neat trick. Did you know that you can make Chex Mix in your slow cooker? We're gonna get some going today. And I don't know about you guys, but I feel like I hardly ever make Chex Mix the same way twice. I mean, I'm always using some kind of cereal, some kind of pretzel, usually some kind of cracker and some kind of nut. But sometimes the types of those things change depending on what I have on hand or what I was able to find on sale at the grocery store. So I'm gonna get out what I have for this and get that in the slow cooker, and then we're gonna make up the sauce. I don't know about y'all, but I don't waste my time with any of this 3/4 or half a teaspoon nonsense. I just use a teaspoon each of onion powder and garlic powder and 2 teaspoons of the seasoned salt and 1 whole stick of butter. And I don't even measure the Worcestershire sauce. I just pour it into my glass measuring cup along with everything else until it looks about right. Pop it into the microwave to melt it all together. Now this is more about the process than the actual recipe. I know everybody has their own specific house recipe for Chex Mix. You know, whether or not you use Crispix instead of rice Chex, or if you are one of those families that uses double butter. This is more about the convenience of being able to make it in the slow cooker. For one thing, if you want to make it in the summertime, because then you don't have to fire up your oven at all. And I don't know, if you're like us over the holidays, you're probably making multiple batches of this, and maybe you don't want to tie up your oven making Chex Mix when you're busy making other delicious holiday goodies. I always sprinkle on extra seasoning salt every time that I stir it as well. Now what I like to do is pop a paper towel on just like that underneath the lid, because it will help catch a little bit of the moisture since this is not quite as dry heat as the oven. And I'm just going to slow cook this on low for 3 hours, and about every 45 minutes I'm gonna go ahead and stir it just like you would if it was in the oven. If you watch my channel, you already know that you can do a shrimp boil in the slow cooker. In fact, I have never made a shrimp boil on the stove or on the grill or on a campfire. I've only ever done it in the slow cooker. My son requests this a lot in the summertime. It's basically your standard shrimp boil ingredients. I get the potatoes and the corn on the cob and the sausages going in the slow cooker earlier in the day with sort of your basic shrimp boil seasonings, and then you add the shrimp at the very end, about 15 to 20 minutes left in the cooking cycle. We eat this in the summertime primarily so that we can cover our patio table with brown paper and just dump it all out right on the table and enjoy it outside. But it's super easy. I don't have to sweat over the grill stove. I don't have to heat up my kitchen doing a shrimp boil on the inside stove. I will see if I can track down the website that talks about this and has the recipe, and I'll leave it linked for you in the description box below. When we think of our crock pots, I know we're often thinking really tender pulled pork or chuck roasts, or we're thinking soups and stews and chilies, but you can also make desserts in the slow cooker. Dump cakes and cobblers are pretty popular slow cooker dessert recipes. I have also made cookie bars in the slow cooker before, and last summer I actually made a really delicious Oreo cheesecake. And this can come in really handy in the summer because cheesecake is one of those desserts that you can eat chilled, but it also takes, you know, a long time to cook in the oven, and most of us don't want to keep our oven going for an hour or more in the summertime. So being able to create a cheesecake in basically a water bath in the slow cooker and not have to heat up our kitchen, I thought that was really interesting. I'll track down that video with that recipe and the original website with the recipe and leave them linked down below in the description box if you're interested in hearing more about that. I have even been able to make pizza in the slow cooker before. It was a deep dish style pizza, and I can't remember if it was Detroit or Chicago style where the sauce is on the top. I always forget which one is which. But you make the dough, you put the dough in the slow cooker, you put the toppings on it, and you put the lid on, and it will perfectly bake your pizza. So if you are gonna be out of the house at dinner time, but you want homemade pizza, you have time early in the afternoon to get that going, you can still do that. I thought that was ingenious. I would never have thought a few years ago about making pizza in my slow cooker. My Crock-Pot Chex Mix is done. It looks and smells absolutely delicious. I am just going to dump it out onto some parchment paper on the counter to cool, and then it'll be ready to eat. And if any is left over at the end of the day, we'll put it in an airtight container or a Ziploc. The Crock-Pot isn't just for food or edible items either. I have heard of people using their slow cookers to make homemade soap. I have read about using your slow cookers to make potpourri if you don't want to burn candles or use air fresheners in your homes. If you've heard of stovetop potpourri, where you use a combination of different juices, fruits, maybe cloves or cinnamon sticks to create, you know, a really nice aroma in your home, you can basically do the same thing with your slow cookers and not have to be running your stove all day. But I have to be honest, this was a new one for me, and this is slow cooker Play-Doh. And I can make homemade Play-Doh on the stove in like 5 minutes. So really this is more of a curiosity thing for me than it is a convenience thing, but I have to find out if this works. So we're gonna try it today. This is my little 4-quart crock pot, and I have in here already 2 cups of flour and ½ a cup of table salt. Yes, you heard that correctly. ½ a cup of table salt, 2 cups of flour. Play-Doh is very salty. I'm adding to that 3 tablespoons of cornstarch and 3 tablespoons cream of tartar. I'm gonna go ahead and stir that all up too, just to kind of combine the dry ingredients before we start adding the wet ones. 2 tablespoons of vegetable oil. I'm definitely not modeling exact measurements here. And then 2 cups of warm water. And you can add a few drops of food coloring. I was out of food coloring, so I actually added about a teaspoon of Jell-O because I've heard that you can sub that. I hope it doesn't mess with the consistency too much. A teaspoon shouldn't, but I just wanted to give this a little bit of a tint. And you know, you can change up the colors according to what you want. But I'm gonna stir this until it is combined, and then I'm gonna pop the lid on and let it cook on high for an hour. And this recipe is coming from the soccermomblog.com, and I'll leave it linked in the description box below. I can't wait to see how this turns out. Okay, it's been a little over an hour, so we're just checking on this because you're supposed to stir it. Oh my goodness. Okay, so you're supposed to stir it, which it's not exactly stirring, but it's done for sure. And what I'm gonna do is just turn this out onto the counter to cool off because it's way too hot to like play with at this point. It needs to cool down a little bit, and then we'll, you know, kind of knead it and see if it has the same consistency as the homemade Play-Doh that I make on the stove. The only funny thing about this Play-Doh, not the only funny thing, I mean the fact that I'm even using a crock pot to make Play-Doh is kind of ridiculous, but like I said, I just wanted to see if it could be done. But also because I was out of food coloring and I had to use the lime Jell-O to color it, it smells like lime. And I thought to myself, probably not a good idea if I'm making this for kids because you don't want them to eat it. I mean, it's not toxic, but it's super salty. It doesn't taste good because of all the salt that's in it. So I'm just thinking, okay, I would definitely need to make sure that I've got food coloring stocked so I could, you know, use just regular food coloring with this and not the really yummy smelling lime Jell-O. There's this lady whose videos pop up in my feed. I don't know if it's on Instagram or on YouTube. and I cannot remember her name off the top of my head, but she basically makes fun of the ridiculous or just flat out bizarre things that people do sometimes in their kitchens. And her videos always start out with, "Everybody's so creative." I feel like this Crockpot Play-Doh would be fodder for one of those videos because it does have the look and feel of the homemade Play-Doh that I normally make on the stove, albeit it does smell like lime jello because of the jello that I used as food coloring. However, it only takes me about 5 minutes to make this from scratch on the stove, so I don't think I would do it again in the Crockpot. I just wanted to see if I could do it. And you know, sometimes we do things just to see if we can, and Crockpot Play-Doh can be done. Tonight, we are having a tried and true family recipe that I have been making for the better part of 2 decades. In fact, I made this recipe so often when my husband and I were first married that we actually had to agree to put the recipe away for a little while because we got kind of tired of it. But it's really easy. It's really cheap. You can make it with really a limited kitchen. You know, if you're still building your kitchen basics and your spices, this is a really great recipe to have. We have always called it Sooner soup in my family. That's just what my mom called it when she was making it while we were growing up. I've also heard it called 7-can soup. And you can make this on the stove, but I like to simmer it in the crock pot. It is almost a dump and go recipe. The only thing that makes it not dump and go or throw and go is that you have to brown a pound of ground beef. And after that is browned, you just add to it all these cans of items. It is 2 cans of mixed vegetables, which are also known as veg-all. That's what the name brand was when I was growing up. 2 cans of beans, 2 cans of rotel, and then 1 can of minestrone soup. And you can change this up. I have used different kinds of tomatoes. I've used different kinds of beans. In fact, today I'm subbing a can of hominy for one of the cans of beans because this is just the way that we like it. I add about a cup of water to mine as well. You let that simmer, and it just makes this really delicious kind of chili style soup that you can serve with rice, you can serve it with cheese, you can serve it with biscuits, with chips on top, just really versatile. Tonight, however, I am going to attempt making cornbread in the slow cooker. And you can make bread in the slow cooker. I have seen some tutorials on how to make like the artisan crusty style breads in the slow cooker. I have made rolls in the crock pot before, but this is my first time trying out cornbread. So we're gonna see how it goes. I am making my cornbread using 2 packages of Jiffy, 2 eggs, 1 cup or 1 8-ounce container of sour cream, and about half a cup of milk, and I just stirred that all together. I was debating whether or not to line my crock pot with foil, and I decided that I would because I want it to be really easy to lift my cornbread out. So I'm gonna just spray this down with a little cooking spray and then pour my cornbread in. I'm cooking this on high, but I really have no idea how long it's gonna take because number one, my Crockpot brand slow cooker cooks kind of hot in my opinion. And number two, when I was researching this, I was getting times all over the place. I was getting 1.5 hours or just 1 hour or 3 hours. So I'm just gonna check on it about every hour until it doesn't look jiggly in the middle anymore. I let this cornbread cook in the slow cooker for a total of 2 hours, which might have been about, I don't know, 15 minutes too long. One side did get a little bit crispy around the edge, but other than that, I think it turned out pretty good as far as the doneness. I'm gonna slice this up and butter it up, and we're gonna have it along with the soup tonight. Should be really yummy. Even though Crocktober is coming to a close, you know if you watch my channel that I use my slow cookers all year long, so I will still be bringing you more slow cooker recipes in the future. In the meantime, leave me a comment and let me know. Do you have any extraordinary or maybe just bizarre uses for your slow cooker that we need to know about? Pick out one of these videos to watch next, and I'll see you there.